A single flat tire, a flustered stranger, a quiet hero. That's all it took to flip Amelia's life upside down and to steer her down a road she never expected. The late afternoon sun cast a golden hue over the lonely stretch of highway just outside the small town of Hartsville. Eli Granger, a 39-year-old auto repairman with calloused hands and a heart as steady as his wrench, spotted a black luxury car pulled awkwardly to the side of the road. He could see a woman pacing near the vehicle, clearly flustered. Her name, he would soon learn, was Lila Monroe. Lila was 27, with fair skin, auburn curls pulled into a hasty bun and soft green eyes rimmed with anxiety. She wore a cream silk blouse, clearly not made for this dusty roadside, and black designer trousers streaked with dust. Her nude heels sunk slightly into the gravel as she turned toward Eli, hope flashing across her delicate face. "Do you need a hand?" Eli called out, already pulling off his cap and grabbing his toolkit. Lila nodded nervously, biting her lower lip. "Flat tire. I'm kind of in a hurry." Eli offered a warm, unbothered smile. "Well, you're in luck. Changing flats is my specialty." As he crouched down beside the car, Lila watched him, her arms folded tightly. She was clearly out of her element, but Eli's calm, grounded presence seemed to settle her breathing. Neither of them knew it yet, but this tire wasn't just flat, it was fate. Eli worked with quiet efficiency, his worn denim overalls and dust-streaked skin in stark contrast to the sleek lines of the luxury sedan. As he worked, Lila stood awkwardly nearby, fiddling with her phone, which had no service. Her soft features were tense with impatience, but also a flicker of guilt. "I really appreciate this," she finally said. "I've never dealt with a flat before." Eli chuckled not unkindly. "No shame in that. Most folks don't until they're stranded in the middle of nowhere." She looked down. "I was supposed to meet someone. I'm probably already late." "Well," Eli said, standing up and brushing dust from his hands, "maybe it's life telling you to slow down a minute." Lila looked at him then. Really looked. Eli's face, tanned and weathered from years of labor, held a calm wisdom in his gray eyes. He was the kind of man who'd seen loss and love and kept going anyway. That small piece of advice, said so simply, landed deeper than it should have. She'd been running for days now, physically and emotionally. Maybe this wasn't just a stop. Maybe it was a sign. As Eli tightened the last lug nut, Lila leaned against the side of the car, arms still folded. He glanced up and said, "What's your name, if you don't mind me asking?" She hesitated for a beat. Her real name, Amelia Langston, carried weight. Billion-dollar inheritance, magazine headlines, and boardroom whispers. Not here. "Lila," she said instead, managing a small smile. "Lila Monroe," Eli nodded, accepting it without question. "I'm Eli Granger. Been running Granger's garage since my old man passed." "Thank you, Eli, really," she added, her voice softening. "No trouble at all," he said, straightening up. "Flat tires got a funny way of showing up right when folks need to slow down." She opened her mouth to reply, but nothing came. She wasn't sure why, but this dusty, unfamiliar man made her feel safer than she had in months. He tipped his cap. "Town's about 5 minutes up the road. If you're staying a while, grab a bite at Molly's Diner. Best pie west of the river." Lila hesitated. She should leave. She had places to be. But instead of driving off, she found herself asking, "Do you think it's okay if I followed you into town?" Eli grinned. "Sure, you're welcome to." Molly's Diner was warm and welcoming, its interior bathed in sunset light. Locals chatted over coffee and fried catfish. The waitress, a cheerful redhead in her 40s, greeted Eli with a wink. "Back again, Eli? Just helping a traveler," Eli replied, motioning to Lila. Lila looked out of place at first, still in her cream blouse and designer trousers, her soft green eyes darting nervously. But as the scent of fresh coffee and cinnamon pie filled her senses, her shoulders relaxed. Eli ordered coffee for them both and slid a menu her way. "Try the pecan pie," she nodded quietly. "Thank you, for earlier, not just the tire. You seemed like you needed someone to slow things down." Lila looked away. "I'm not used to slowing down, or being anywhere without a plan." Eli stirred his coffee. "Sometimes life's best moments happen without a plan." Lila smiled faintly, though her eyes still held secrets. As they talked, her guarded exterior began to chip away. He noticed how her smile was soft but sad, how her fingers trembled slightly when she held her mug. She wasn't just lost, she was hiding, and Eli had a feeling this wasn't the last he'd see of Lila Monroe. Later that evening, Lila checked into the small-town motel, room key clutched tightly in her hand. The room was simple, floral curtains, scratchy blankets, and a small TV, but for once she didn't mind. She stared at herself in the bathroom mirror. Her blouse was wrinkled, her face slightly smudged with road dust, and her eyes, they were haunted. Back home, Amelia Langston would be expected at the Langston Foundation Gala, a celebration of her family's latest acquisition. Her father, Ronald Langston, would already be fuming. Emilia had disappeared days ago, ignoring calls, messages, and obligations. But it wasn't a tantrum. It was a rebellion. She was tired of being an accessory to her father's empire, of being used as a pawn in mergers and PR stunts. She wanted her own identity, one that wasn't tied to wealth, privilege, or polished lies. She curled up on the stiff motel bed and whispered to the ceiling, "I just want to be someone real." Outside, Hartsville slept under a quiet sky. Inside, a woman born into riches was beginning to learn the value of simplicity, and of a man who fixed more than just her tire that day. The next morning, sunlight poured into Lila's motel room. She sat on the edge of the bed, her bare feet on the cold tile floor. Something about the small town had slowed her racing thoughts. She hadn't checked her phone in hours, a record since leaving home. A knock on the door startled her. She peered through the window to see Eli standing there, a brown paper bag in hand and his usual calm smile on his rugged, sun-worn face. "Thought you might be hungry," he said when she opened the door. Inside the bag, 2 breakfast burritos and a fresh thermos of black coffee. She blinked, confused. "Why are you being so kind to me?" he shrugged, leaning against the doorframe. "You looked like you needed someone to." "No strings?" she asked, still suspicious, conditioned by years of people wanting something from her. "No strings," he said simply. "Just breakfast." Lila smiled slowly, touched. In a world where every gesture seemed to come with a price tag, Eli asked for nothing. Not her name, not her past, not her reasons for hiding. Just a burrito, a thermos, and a silent message, "You're welcome here." And for the first time in years, Lila believed it. Later that day, Lila wandered into Granger's garage. The place smelled of engine grease, old metal, and something warm. Something safe. Eli stood under the hood of a truck, arms deep in the engine, his blue t-shirt smeared with oil, his brow damp with sweat. Lila, in borrowed jeans and a flannel shirt from the motel Lost and Found, looked nothing like the woman from the luxury car. She looked normal. "Need help?" she asked, surprising even herself. Eli looked up with a smirk. "Ever used a wrench?" He laughed lightly. "No, but I'm a fast learner." He tossed her a rag and showed her how to loosen a bolt. Her hands fumbled, delicate fingers clumsy against cold metal. But Eli didn't tease her. He coached gently, his voice patient. In that garage, Lila wasn't a billionaire heiress. She wasn't hiding or running. She was just a girl with grease on her cheek, trying to understand how things worked, how she worked. And under that hood something else cracked open. Her fear, her mask, her loneliness. "Looks like you're a natural," Eli said. Lila smiled, her heart pounding, not from the work but from the way he looked at her, as if she belonged. That evening, the quiet routine was broken by the entrance of a sharply dressed man into Molly's diner. His suit was too expensive for the town, his presence too loud for the soft-spoken regulars. He scanned the room, then sat at the far booth, ordering coffee in a clipped, impatient tone. He glanced at his phone repeatedly, lips tight. Lila, seated at the counter with Eli, stiffened. Eli noticed. "You okay?" She nodded too quickly. "Yeah, just... Doesn't he look out of place?" Eli followed her gaze. "Definitely not a regular." The man kept glancing toward her, but didn't approach. Still, his presence was a shadow, one from her old world. She could feel it creeping toward her. "I think I should go," she said quietly, sliding off the stool. Eli stood too. "Want me to walk you?" "No, I'll be okay." But she wasn't. That man, he wasn't just a stranger. He was a messenger, from the life she thought she'd left behind. Back at her motel room, Lila locked the door and collapsed on the bed, heart racing. She knew who that man was, Paul Henson, her father's assistant. If he'd found her, then others would too. She paced the room, her hands trembling. Maybe she'd stayed too long, maybe she shouldn't have let herself enjoy this town, this man. But even as fear gripped her, something else held firm, her desire to stay, to be more than Amelia Langston. She reached for her phone, dozens of missed calls, texts from her father, her stepmother, and board members. But she didn't call back. Instead, she called Molly's diner. "Hi, this is Lila. Could you tell Eli I might need to talk tomorrow?" She hung up before Molly could reply. She wasn't sure what she was doing, but she knew she couldn't keep running. Somehow, Eli had shown her what it meant to face things head-on, to build something real, instead of hiding behind wealth. Tomorrow, she'd tell him everything, even if it meant losing him. Eli was already at the garage when Lila arrived the next morning, his face shadowed with curiosity. She stood in front of him, her voice shaky but strong. "My real name isn't Lila Monroe. It's Amelia Langston." He didn't flinch, just kept his eyes on hers. "My family owns Langston International, billion-dollar company. I was supposed to be at a gala last week, but I left. I couldn't breathe in that life anymore." Eli set down his wrench. "I figured you had secrets. You're not angry," he shook his head. "I'm not a man who judges someone by their name." Tears welled in her eyes. "I wanted to tell you, but I was scared you'd treat me differently. I never cared about who you were," Eli said. "Only who you are here." In that moment, her shoulders sagged with relief. For the first time, she wasn't Amelia the heiress. She was just a woman standing in front of a man who saw through her walls. And he didn't walk away. The garage was quiet that afternoon as Amelia, no longer hiding behind the name Lila, watched Eli work on a dusty red pickup truck. She sat on a stool nearby, her jeans smeared with grease, her auburn curls tied back with a bandana borrowed from Molly. "I told you my truth," she said softly. "What about yours?" Eli paused. "What do you want to know? Why you're so calm, like nothing ever rattles you?" He gave a sad smile. "I was a firefighter once, before the garage. Lost my partner in a warehouse fire. We went in together, but only I made it out." Amelia's breath caught. She saw the weight behind his quiet eyes now, the pain he wore like an old coat. "I blamed myself for a long time," he continued. "Then I realized I had to find a way to help people in smaller ways, fixing cars, fixing what I can." She reached out, touching his oil-streaked hand. "You're doing more than you think." He looked up, and in that shared moment, survivor to survivor, they saw each other, not for their pasts but for what they could become together. Word traveled fast in quiet towns, and Eli wasn't the only one who now knew Amelia's truth. The next morning, a sleek black car pulled up outside the garage. Ronald Langston, powerful, silver-haired, and simmering with fury, stepped out. He marched into the garage, his tailored suit a strange sight against the rusted tool cabinets and grease-stained floors. "Amelia," he said sharply, "what are you doing here?" She stood tall, the grease on her clothes a badge of pride. "I'm building something real. You're throwing away everything your mother and I built. You built an empire. I never wanted it. I want a life where people don't see a dollar sign when they look at me." Ronald's gaze flicked to Eli. "This is about him, isn't it?" "No," she said firmly. "It's about me." For a long moment Ronald said nothing. Then he turned and left, his footsteps echoing. Eli walked to her side. "You all right?" She exhaled. "Yeah, I finally said what I've needed to for years." The weight of her family's expectations began to lift, and in its place was something lighter, braver, hers. The following week, Amelia had an idea, something Eli had never expected. "I want to start a program," she told him, eyes sparkling with purpose. "Here, at the garage, for kids who need somewhere to go after school." Eli raised an eyebrow. "A youth workshop? Exactly. You teach cars. I can teach budgeting, resumes, life skills, maybe even basic coding." He looked at her, this woman who once couldn't tell a wrench from a screwdriver, now bubbling with passion. "You really want to do this?" She nodded. "I have the funds, but more importantly, I have the will. I want to give back to this place that gave me a second chance." Eli smiled, proud. "Then let's build it." They got to work transforming the old storage space in the garage into a youth learning center. Amelia rolled up her sleeves, painting, hammering, designing flyers. Her eyes lit up in a way money never managed to spark. This wasn't about status. It was about service, and for the first time, Amelia Langston was doing something truly hers. The youth program, named Second Gear, quickly gained attention. Flyers went up around Hartsville. Kids trickled in, curious, awkward, hesitant. Amelia greeted each with the same warmth Eli once showed her. She wore jeans and flannels every day now, her hair often tied in a Bessie bun, her green eyes always lit with excitement. She taught budgeting with whiteboards and cookies. Eli taught them how to change oil and patch tires. Together, they created a safe space where teens learned not just skills but self-worth. One afternoon, a teenage girl named Brianna stayed behind. "Miss Amelia," she said shyly, "you ever miss your old life?" Amelia smiled. "Sometimes, but I was never really happy in it." The girl nodded, understanding in her eyes. Word began to spread. Second Gear became more than just a garage program. It became a community movement. Parents offered to volunteer. Local businesses donated supplies. And every evening, Amelia stood next to Eli, watching kids find purpose just like she had. Though her father hadn't returned, his presence lingered. Then one day, a banker arrived at the garage with papers. "A donation. A trust fund from an anonymous donor," he said, handing Eli the documents, "to support Second Gear indefinitely." Amelia stared at the paperwork. The name of the trust, R&L Initiatives, R&L Ronald Langston. She blinked, her throat tightening. Her father hadn't said a word, but he had listened. Eli looked at her, surprised. "This changes everything," she nodded slowly. "He's still him, but maybe he sees me now." Though their relationship remained strained, that silent donation was his olive branch, a way of saying, "I may not understand, but I support you." Amelia didn't cry, she smiled. After months of building and bonding, the time came to celebrate the first graduating class of Second Gear. The garage was transformed into a party space, banners, music, cupcakes, and proud parents. Each student received a certificate, a toolbox, and a hug from either Eli or Amelia, or both. Brianna gave a small speech. Miss Amelia showed us we could do more than survive, we could thrive. Tears filled Amelia's eyes. Eli put a strong hand on her shoulder. You made this happen, he whispered. No, she replied, we did. That night, as the stars blinked over Hartsville, Eli and Amelia stood outside the garage, watching lanterns float into the sky. Hope, light, a future, and a love that neither had planned but both had built. One quiet evening, as they closed up the garage, Eli turned to her. You ever think of going back, he asked. To Langston Towers, she laughed. Not a chance. No, I mean, to the name. Amelia Langston. She paused. I think I want to be just Amelia, or maybe just Mia. He nodded. I like that. She looked at him, her voice soft. What about you? Ever think of starting something bigger with me? Eli smiled. You mean like a life? She nodded, and he didn't need a ring to say yes. He just took her hand. Months passed. Amelia became part of the very heartbeat of Hartsville. People no longer whispered, that rich girl from the city. They said, Miss Mia from the garage. She laughed more, slept better, woke up with purpose. She wore overalls now, not gowns, boots instead of heels, and every Sunday Eli and Mia took long drives in that same red pickup, waving at neighbors and handing out baked goods made by the teens of second gear. Her past no longer haunted her, her wealth didn't define her, and her heart, it belonged to this town and to a quiet man with a steady gaze. Eli never gave her a mansion, never took her on yachts, but he gave her oil-stained hands to hold, shared laughter at sunset, warm coffee on cold mornings. He gave her respect, a place beside him, not behind him, and she gave him her whole heart. Their love wasn't written in diamonds or luxury, but in chalk on blackboards, in the grease beneath their nails, in the lives they lifted together. They never needed a wedding to prove it. They lived it every single day. It all began with a flat tire. One moment of panic, one act of kindness, one stranger who didn't ask for anything in return. That tire didn't ruin her day, it saved her life, from a runaway heiress to a beloved mentor, from a lonely repairman to a man who built something far greater than engines. Together, they proved you don't need to be born into the same world to find home in each other. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe for more inspiring tales of love, redemption, and the beauty of second chances.